Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast, where we break mental health stigmas through conversations. I'm your host, Nat, and we dive into topics about trauma and how it impacts the nervous system. Yet we don't just leave you there. We share insights and tools of self-care, meditation, and growth that help you be curious about your own biology. Your presence matters. Please like and subscribe to our podcast. Help our community grow. Let's get into this. Oh, and please remember to be kind to yourself. Welcome to the Lift Oneself podcast. I'm your host, Nat, and today I have a lovely guest named Elizabeth Cush, better known as Biz. So, Biz, could you let the listeners know a little bit about yourself and who you are and why the name Biz?
Yeah, good questions. So yes, I am Biz or Elizabeth Cush. I am a licensed therapist in the United States, both in Maryland and Delaware. That's where I'm licensed to practice therapy. But I'm also a life coach for highly sensitive women. And I came about this work later in life. I didn't graduate college in my 20s and went back in my 40s and then got my master's degree. I think I graduated with my master's in counseling psychology at like 53 and have now been in private practice, both with therapy and coaching for about 10 years. So yeah, I'm a late life bloomer, but I've done a lot of other things that led up to this. I have 3 grown children. I have a dachshund who loves me to death, but also makes me crazy. And I'm married and have been married for almost 39 years. So there you go. That's me.
Thank you for, blessing us with the listeners to see that there's no such thing as it's too late. And to
Oh, yeah.
really understand the warrior work to allow yourself to learn new things and to really access that fulfillment within yourself, no matter what the world wants to put in place on people, especially women, because
Yes.
ageism is such a heavy topic that blocks a lot of women from, finding what would fulfill them and seek new things. So I'm looking forward to this conversation because it gives the listeners and other people a space of a lived experience, not just theory
Mhm.
and telling people something. You're talking from lived experience. So you're able to give them the verbiage about, the inner struggles or the discovery or the curiosity and,
Mhm.
what's possible, and the tools needed. Because, when you're
Yeah.
activating and you're going into new things, our nervous system will create barriers of protection. And it's like, okay, how do you disarm all of that?
Oh,
So
yeah.
before we get into that, would you be willing to join me in a mindful moment?
I would love to. I love that this is how you start the conversations too.
Yeah.
Yes.
I started this because, we tell people to meditate, yet when are we actually inviting it in our lived experience? So I
Yeah.
really want to invite listeners to, even if they only do this mindful moment in the podcast, at least they're accessing these tools to see the benefit of, grounding ourselves in our breath. And
Yeah.
for the listeners, as you always hear my spiel, if you're driving or need your visual, please don't close your eyes, safety first. Yet the other prompts you're able to follow through. So, Biz, I'll ask you to get comfortable in your seat. And if it's safe to do so, you're going to gently close your eyes. And you're going to begin breathing in and out through your nose. And you're going to bring your awareness to watching your breath go in and out. You're not going to try and control your breath. You're just going to let it guide you into your body. There may be some sensations or feelings coming up, and that's okay. Let them come up. You're safe to feel. You're safe to let go. Surrender the need to control. Release the need to resist and just be. Be with your breath. Drop deeper into your body. And just be. probably some thoughts or to-do lists that may have popped up in your mind, and that's okay. Gently bring your awareness back to your breath, creating space between the awareness and the thoughts, and dropping deeper into your body, allowing yourself to just be with the breath. Again, more thoughts may have popped up. Gently bring your awareness to your breath, beginning again, creating even more space between the awareness and the thoughts, and dropping even deeper into the body. Just being with the breath. Now, at your own time and at your own pace, you're going to gently open your eyes while staying with your breath. How's your heart doing?
Going really feels very soft right now. And I noticed during that brief meditation that I was really nervous. Like I felt the like butterflies in my stomach, which I really hadn't um, been really fully present with before we paused and sat with that. So yeah, it was kind of nice to just pay attention to that and say, oh, all right, that's there. And I do get nervous in interviews sometimes, so makes sense.
Exactly. It's public speaking. And that's, the whole work is inviting the fear and listening to what the body is trying to communicate rather than numb ourselves or separate from ourselves or create a narration that that's not the way you should be feeling.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, I am a meditator, but it took me some time to really get to that place where, like, whatever was arising was okay. Like, that it didn't necessarily all have to feel good and joyous, that it was okay that those other feelings were there and to appreciate them too.
Yeah, that's the whole with the W, so that you can understand not just doing a la carte with what you want to feel and just feeling the comfortable. It's allowing everything to come up because it's data, it's information. Yet it doesn't mean that you have to identify with it. I give a
Right.
visual for those emotions of it being a guidance and data. It's like a GPS. The GPS will give you a route, yet it doesn't mean that you're etched in stone that you have to follow only that route. If you know another
Mm,
possibility, you can try it. And if you go off course, that GPS will be like, oh, wait, we found another way, course correct, if you want to, or you could still do your way. And it might keep saying course correct, yet you get to the destination that the GPS wasn't aware of. So it's
yeah.
really engaging with trusting yourself. I think, in a society that tells you you're not good enough, you don't have this yet, you don't have that yet, it separates you from trusting and allowing life to be messy.
Hmm.
So, as you said in your introduction,
Yes.
you were a late bloomer of coming into a space of providing a safe space for others to engage with their inner world. Can you allow us to know what prompted you to jump into this space and, what it took within yourself to do that warrior work?
Hmm. So I had always wanted to go back to school, didn't really know what for, but I think the reasoning behind it was that I felt like I was supposed to have been a college graduate, not that I had this passion. But then I had my first child when I was 28, and soon a second child after that, 17 months later. And then my youngest was born about 7 years after that. But during that process of child rearing, I realized that there were ways in which I was raised, things, don't feel your feelings, don't create conflict, don't deal with trauma if you've experienced it, don't talk about it, don't share it, don't, right, like those messages and ways of raising children I didn't want to repeat. So I really bought some books on child psychology and then realized that was really a passion for me, that just bloomed this part of me that wanted to learn more but also to be able to help others. So I went back to school kind of with the idea that I was going to be a child psychologist. And I realized that that was just too triggering for me, that that was not a space where I could really, truly be my best helping self. And so as I continued with school, sort of refined that into really helping trauma survivors and really diving into that work. So I worked for about 10 years at a local hospital with domestic violence victims, sexual assault victims, people who had experienced elder care, child abuse also. And so that role as a crisis counselor really shaped also the work that I wanted to do uh, in more in depth. So I was seeing people in the moment of crisis, but I really wanted to be able to go with them on their journey to help them heal. And so that prompted me to get my master's in counseling and go from there.
You mentioned in your website that you're here to empower women and show them a different way. What created that evolution? Was it that 10 years of dealing with trauma that you really saw the part where, there's not a lot of tools or a space for women to really be themselves? There's all these narrations and belief systems that are placed on them.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes. So working in that environment, especially with domestic violence and sexual assault, just realizing how much one is put on us culturally, societally from the moment we're born, also what family puts on us. And it felt really important to um, normalize, but also to acknowledge like all of these components, all the things that are happening throughout your life are impacting you today, right? As a woman. And if we can release some of those burdens, one, those that aren't ours, but also like the traumas, helping us heal from those, it just, I think when I began my private practice as a therapist, I specialize, well, I still do, but specialize in anxiety because I was such an anxious child because of what I had experienced, which was unresolved trauma, right? And so I just wanted to really let other women know, one, that they were not alone, and two, that the anxiety wasn't just who they were, as you said before, like instead of identifying with it, to be able to acknowledge it, feel what's beneath it, right? Like, so much of the time, anxiety is so all encompassing, especially if it's really acute, where maybe you're having a panic attack or some social anxiety. If we can just feel deeper to better understand what's beneath that, oftentimes it's fear, right? I'm afraid, I'm scared, I don't feel safe. But those are hard to feel, especially if you have experienced some sort of either attachment trauma or big T trauma, as they call it. Those feelings often aren't given any value or allowed to surface. And so it just ends up just being all stuck inside. And so I just wanted to normalize for women that one, healing was possible, but two, there may be outside things that are coming together that created this anxiety, that it's not just you.
Mhm. So you mentioned that you are in the US
Mm-hmm.
and just had an election on Tuesday. We're recording
Yeah,
right
we
now.
did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of anxiety in the air because, as I mentioned this, my nervous system is just signaling ramping. Yet I think it's important to hold this conversation to
Yeah.
empower the women and validate the anxiety and fear because it's justified,
Yep.
um, of the uncertainty and the unknown and the patriarch and the power struggles that are there. Um,
Yes.
what do you think, and how are you going to contribute to hold the space for women with this anxiety, the rage, the anger, the shutdown, all the different plethora of where the nervous system brings us when it's activated? What is the space that you want to provide for women to empower them to feel what their emotions and what the fear is signaling, yet being able to access to show up in present time.
Yeah, well, it's something that I'm having to do myself, right? Um, I can say honestly that it's it's challenging right now. It's going to continue to be challenging. And what I've been reminding my clients of today is that although there is so much uncertainty, that what we can be present with today, whether it is feeling shut down or distress or acute sadness or rage, life continues, right? We still have to live. We still have to. I, I feel like there's this part of me that just wants to say we can't let them, and I don't mean to create otherness, but we can't let the situation
Mhm.
take away our joy, take away our gratefulness, our gratitude, our pleasure, our mindful moments in nature or with other people. And there are others out there. There is community to be had or found if you need it. But um and I do believe not that we have to be happy all the time, but if we can work on our internal energetic experience, being balanced or as balanced as we can be in the moment, um, coming back to balance when we're not, that does radiate out into the world, that is important for the collective. And do we know what's going to happen? No. Do we have some idea of what's going to happen? Yes, because he was in power 4 years ago. So there's some justification to all of it too. You are allowed to feel whatever it is you're feeling. And, you don't have to hurry up with that you can take your time to move through the distress in whatever ways that support you.
Yeah, I think it's really important to remind people not to bypass, you know,
Right?
slow it down and feel, yet still show up with the joy. As it takes a lot of courage to show up with life when there's so much uncertainty and there's the threat of pain, the threat of loss, the threat of being oppressed,
Yeah.
the threat of going backwards.
Yes.
Yet
Yes.
the courage to still show up with what's present right now. And I think what's really important for myself is to remind myself, God, Allah, universe, whatever name you call that spiritual that guides your life force, it's always
Mhm.
signaling to you. Yet if you're not present in your body, you're not able to answer that call. You're not able to
Yeah.
listen to that guidance. You're not able to be open to hear that networking of seeing somebody that you may have not seen because you were so stuck in your head that you
Hmm.
couldn't intuitively use your nervous system to feel those frequencies, because our
Yeah.
nervous systems communicate way more than when we speak our languages or we use our thoughts of trying to do Jedi tricks. It's like
Right.
that intuition, that openness, that connection, and that safety. So I think, you said it so beautifully, like take your time, yet also remember to show up with the joy.
Yeah.
That's our work, and especially when there's grief.
Yes.
Grief
Yes.
right
Yes.
now.
Oh, so much grief, so much grief. And I don't ever want to minimize that. And, and we can hold both, right?
Yes.
We can
Yes.
hold both. And if we allow others, the system, whatever it is, to take away those moments of joy, it just takes so much away from our life.
Yeah.
I just feel like we're entitled to feel it all.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's end in both and more. Not
Yeah.
the black and white. It's let's invite people outside of that black and white. And, you know, the judgmental and analytical part of our mind is protection of the nervous system. So learn to surrender those parts so that you can see what's possible and be present right now, even though your mind is creating all these scenarios of what ifs and what can and what has. It's like be present with what's here right now.
Yeah.
And, we were already bombarded with the things of the world that are going on constantly. And I
Mm.
just read something about Afghanistan and the women, and that went backwards too. So
Mm.
it's like, whew, women, there's been a narration from the beginning of time that women had to fight just to have an existence in
Oh
under
my
the
gosh.
foot of the patriarch in a man's world.
Yeah.
Yet it's like not taking this to feed in to that system, being that energetic life force of connecting that way, where, a lot of the medical system or scientific will say, I don't think that exists. Yet when we
Mm.
really, combine our forces in there, there's things that happen that cannot be explained. Yet it's that
Exactly.
we joined in that life force and
Yeah.
really got to dissolve our belief systems, like all these things that are happening. And when you say they, it's really they, the belief systems, the
Yes. The culture,
ideology,
the ideology.
the
Yes.
fear
Yes.
that's
The systems.
fueling it. So it's remembering when you see a person in front of you, those belief
Yes.
systems are going to make you not want to see the human.
Oh,
And
I
that's our
know.
work,
I
to see
know.
a human. And
Yeah.
it's like so difficult because you're
Yeah.
justified. Like everybody wants to be Donald Trump angry. And it's
Oh,
like,
we are so othered. Yeah. Yeah.
like the collective of what he's representing with belief systems. So, I just wanted to bring this forth so that women can feel, have permission to feel and feel
Yeah.
safe to feel, yet also be able to show up with life.
Yeah.
That, like you said, the end in both.
Yes. Yes. And well, I would say the thing that got me through yesterday was connecting with the women in my life, right? To reach out, like, how are you doing? Just expressing the grief, the loss, the frustration, the anger, but also to be like, I'm here and you're here. Like, we're still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it feels a little bit like history's repeating itself.
Oh, so much,
As
so much.
humans create as patterns, and we think, oh no, it won't. And it's like, history does repeat itself, and it evolutions and patterns. When you really know psychology and you know the spiraling and the circles, that you're like, this seems familiar. And it's like, yeah, you're just at a different point, but that's,
Yes.
the way these patterns of human evolution go on. The movie Handmaid's Tale
Mm.
almost feels like a foretelling of what, it doesn't feel like, no, no, this couldn't happen, yet
Oh my gosh. Right?
you
All of a
really
sudden
don't
we're like,
know.
wait a minute. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So it,
I was sharing with a client today, like, looking backward at history, that at the beginning of World War II, there were politicians and people in the US that were backing Hitler, right? That they were believing that we have to keep our cultures clean and free from the others, right? And like, that's hard to imagine today. And yet, here we are creating the same dialogue of here's these groups of people that we deem unworthy or unfit or less than. And it's the same and feels as terrible as that did.
yeah.
I mean, I wasn't alive then, but yes, reading about it.
How I see it, nervous systems create nervous systems. So
Mm.
the knowing that we usually have, or the deja vus, or we enter a space and it's like, I've been here before, those energetic charges get passed on. So as
Mm.
people say, generation curses, but there's generation knowledge also that gets passed on so that you
Yes.
can remember what the history felt like. You can remember what's possible also, so that
Yeah.
you can access that ancestral energy charges and be able to understand it. Because I know some people might be like, no, no, it's just this life and that's it. Yet, if you really look at the miracle of how a body is created by two like liquid energies that have to be looked under a microscope to see how it's moving, and then it creates a pancreas and liver and all that, and you think just minimally there's not something more connected that has an energy field of knowledge and information that we can pass on in the generations and everything else.
Oh, totally. And it gets passed on through our genes, which they're finding out now scientifically. Like it's actually there in our system. And yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. How are you taking care of yourself? As you mentioned, you're having to apply the tools for yourself to be able to hold space for your clients. Are you willing
Hmm.
to share how you are caring for yourself in this activation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yesterday was really hard. So yesterday was when we heard the actual results of at least for myself, of the election. And I was home. My husband was traveling. So I was here by myself with my dog. And what I want, like my first instinct was like, I'm canceling everything. I'm just going to stay home in my little cocoon and I'm just going to be here and be safe and know that I'm safe and just be in it. And I realized that, well, so fortunately, I had my own personal therapy session scheduled first thing yesterday morning. And my therapist uses IFS, internal family systems. And so she she was so great. She just sat with me while we're virtual, but I just mapped all my parts, right? So all the feelings that were coming up, I had this little chart of like, here's the anger, and here's the part that wants to hide, and here's the part that wants to cry, and here's the part that wants just to pretend like nothing has happened and move on, and the parts that want to protect me. And so that really helped balance my nervous system, right, to just honor all that was coming up. And I had a meditation group. I have a meditation group that also meets on Wednesdays, and it's a relatively new experience for me. I'm new to this area where I live in Delaware, and I wasn't sure how safe it was going to be emotionally for me. And I decided to go anyway. I was like, if it's not safe, I can leave. If I don't feel safe, if the energy doesn't feel safe, I can leave. And what if it's supportive? What if it's what I need right now, right? To be with others who are feeling the same things. And it ended up being that, it was really lovely. And we spent an hour and a half together, a little bit of time outside grounding, but just sharing the collective experience and the grief and the frustration. So that was really lovely. And I'm so glad I didn't just hide. So there's that. But the rest of the day, I took off. I stayed home. I took care of myself. I walked my dog. I took a walk on the beach. I'm fortunate enough to live near the ocean. And so I took a walk by myself on the beach, and that was really helpful. So it's just for me, I have to take care of myself, right? I have to lean into what do I need, even while I'm helping others, because if I'm not caring for myself, I'm not much good at helping others take care of themselves too. Um, I'm a relatively new practitioner of Reiki, so I've been working with that with a group too. So that's been really helpful. Um, but I meditate daily, and that's just such a great resource to just be with myself and know that I can create safety within. Um, Journaling helps sometimes, sometimes not so much. Sometimes it just leads me to focus more on the worry than what's possible. But I also got I'm on an email list for therapists that use meditation and mindfulness in their work. And they were just, somebody sent an article with, I guess it was mostly Buddhists, but just their commentary on what's happening in the world and what we're feeling and how to move forward, or how they're seeing they're going to move forward. And it just felt like there was possibility, I guess. Not that it was necessarily like, oh, everything is going to be fine, but it's like if we can, basically, like what you said, if we can keep our energy clean, if we can be grounded, if we can be in tune with how we're feeling, that's going to radiate out into the world.
Mhm. Yeah. I want to remind the listeners and myself as I say this, there will be discomfort. I
Oh,
know our nervous system doesn't like to hear that. We want it just, kumbaya, utopia. And it's like there is going to be discomfort. And as we know with humans, the resilience is reminding ourselves that we have the capacity to navigate through the pain. Pain wants to shut us down, yet if we have a better relationship with the pain, then we don't get stuck in the suffering of rejecting reality. Because if you're in the reality, then you can find the tools to better build a better future. Yet if you're
Yes.
rejecting the reality, you will create suffering and you will not know how to come out of the maze or hear, the inner direction of what are those tools or what is the connection that we create a different pathway. So I
Hmm.
just want to not create this stoicism that we're not supposed to have emotions and also
Yeah.
not be all in vulnerability that we're like shut down. It's integrating the both of them and
Yeah.
not being so much in apathy that you feel that you can't access your emotions to be able to move forward. It's actually
Right.
by feeling the emotions that we will create that change in there.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to create more community with safe spaces so that we
Yes.
can release these charges to remind ourselves presently what's going on right here. Because a dysregulated nervous system is going to throw all kinds of scenarios that are not fun. So I label it as dress rehearsal for tragedy that hasn't happened yet. Yet
Mm.
you don't want to do the dress rehearsal. You just want to be present right now and not create a double whammy of a situation, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Totally, totally. Because if if we're anticipating the tragedy, the distress, the unknown, right? If we're trying to predict what might happen or what will happen, we're living in that distress now when it hasn't actually happened, right? And so if we can be more present, not to say there won't be distress down the road and you're going to feel
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
but if we can enter it at a place where we're more able to handle it, all that much better, right? Where we can pull on the resources we have inside.
yeah. And the reason why I'm explaining this is because I've been supporting my friend with pancreatic cancer.
Oh
She was
man.
diagnosed in March of 2023, and she was told she only had 3 months to live. And she's
Wow.
still here.
Wow.
October 7th, though, she had a medical crisis in the ER and became non-responsive in DNR conversations. Yet she came back online. And so the mind will be in the grief of, oh, she's going to die. Yet it takes the courage to show up with the living and to
Hmm.
be in that vulnerability, still draw her in that although you're going to disturb my mind if you do transition before me, yet I'm not going to shut down this overwhelm. I'm going to actually lean into it to really feel the fragility of life and know that there may be discomfort, yet there's that capacity. And this is what it is to experience your humanness.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I'm speaking this and people might feel like I might be dismissing their experience, I just want to let I'm walking through a lived experience of what that can feel like. And I'm sure there's other listeners that can share that same sense of courage it takes to show
Yeah.
up in that. So this part is another bigger part of the collective of that courage to show up, even though despite that there might be something that's coming around the corner.
Yeah.
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 Now I want to ask you a reflective question.
Okay.
I want to ask you to go back to your 18-year-old self. And you have 3 words to tell your 18-year-old self to carry you to the journey of now. What would
Mm.
those 3 words be?
I have 5 words, but the first that came to mind were it will get better. Um, the second two were trust yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. I look back at my 18-year-old self and with so much compassion, and but it wasn't easy. Being in high school wasn't easy for me. College wasn't easy for me. Um, so I think, yeah, just it'll get better, and you will learn to trust yourself. Yeah.
Now, can you let the listeners know where they can find you, Biz?
Yes, and I realized I didn't share where Biz came from either,
Yes.
so I can share that as well. My birth name is Elizabeth, and my mom didn't really want to use any of the traditional nicknames. And so my grandmother knew an Elizabeth who was called Biz. And so that was the name I was given from, yeah, I was called Biz for my whole life, really. Yeah. Different
Nice.
variations of Biz, but yeah, solidly in Biz since college. Yeah.
Nice.
How they can find me. For my therapy practice, as I said, I'm licensed in the United States in Maryland and Delaware, and I can be found there at progressioncounseling.com. And then I am also a life coach for highly sensitive women. And I just want to shout out to any highly sensitive women out there during this time that it's really important to take care of our sensitive nature and give ourselves the time to reset and recharge with all that's going on. But you can find me at elizabethcushcoaching.com. That's where you will find my coaching website and offers. I've got a lot of free stuff there, and I have my podcast there. So, yeah.
Is there something that your heart wants to leave with the listeners?
I guess it's just, that we're in this together, that I don't want to minimize that I don't want to say it's going to be fine, because it might not be fine, but we are in this together, and there is community to be found. And so, reach out to the people that matter to you, but the people that can meet you where you are.
I want to thank you for honoring us with the most valuable gift that you could give anyone, which is your time. Time is a tool, and it's not a toy. So I take it very deeply and gratefully when, guests come on and share their experiences, share their modalities, and share their time. So thank you so much for being here, for being so vulnerable, for being so tender and gentle. I know there's a lot of listeners that will feel the soothing and comfort of riding, the tsunami waves of what's going on globally for a lot of women, and also the men supporting,
Absolutely.
the women and everything else. So thank you so much for what you bring into the world, Biz.
Oh, Natalie, I so much appreciate your having me on the podcast, and your energy was just what I needed on a 2 days after the election. So thank you.
You're welcome. Please remember to be kind to yourself.
Hey, you made it all the way here. I appreciate you and your time. If you found value in this conversation, please share it out. If there was somebody that popped into your mind, take action and share it out with them. It possibly may not be them that will benefit. It's that they know somebody that will benefit from listening to this conversation. So please take action and share out the podcast. You can find us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok under Lift Oneself. And if you want to inquire about the work that I do and the services that I provide to people, come over on my website, come into a discovery call, liftoneself.com. Until next time, please remember to be kind and gentle with yourself. You matter.